You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
This is the Daniel Monday Night Community Show on demand through YouTube. Thank you very much for choosing to listen to us through this method. If you'd like to keep up to date with when I add new interviews, then subscribe to this channel.
Tears of the Devil by John Fryer, with Nigel Peaver, Richard Graylin, Jeff Bainham and Robin Ingram as the banker. The play is set in a fictional White House in the early years of the 21st century.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a brief statement to make with reference to the loss of the British oil tanker Ocean Spirit that sank 2 days ago. Following this tragic event, an international criminal investigation has started. This investigation is naturally in its very early stages, but we can already reveal that certain facts are already known. Firstly, that the sinking of the ship and the complete loss of all hands was not an accident. An act of terrorism is now believed responsible for the disaster. A massive 5,000-pound explosive device in the hull of the vessel detonated at 12:31. So destructive was the result that the ship split in two portions, sending it and the crew to their deaths. This is one of the worst acts of terrorism ever seen on the high seas, and we must take some comfort from the fact that had such an attack taken place in a busy port, the number of deaths would have been a great deal higher.
Mr. Ambassador, welcome.
Mr. Sterling, I take it you are well.
Oh, never better, sir, never better.
That is good.
Your good self and your president?
I'm also well.
Excellent.
My president, however, is concerned about your country's foreign policy.
I'm not sure I understand, Mr. Ambassador.
Mr. Sterling, you enjoy the largest, most formidable armed forces on the face of the planet.
God has been good to us.
And that has led some of my colleagues in Moscow to believe that your confidence has led to arrogance.
Our culture is what people want.
I wonder if that is true.
Freedom, democracy, hope, opportunity, a better future for society as a whole, that sort of thing.
Really?
The sort of thing that the Russian people are currently enjoying.
Due to financial constraints, my people are not enjoying those qualities. Just yet.
Well, we are only here to offer this way of life.
Or inflict it on nations that choose a different path.
You've never forgiven us for the end of communism, have you?
Communism kept my country down, while yours raised ahead, and we both know why.
The eagle soared, while the bear fell to its knees.
You seem to feel that you have the right to dictate energy policy to the world, regardless of whether the world agrees with Washington or not.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ambassador, I don't know where this is coming from.
We are suspicious of some of the motives of the Pentagon and its backers, Mr. Sterling.
What are you alluding to, Mr. Gagarin? What are we really talking about?
An explosion at the prison in the Sudan and a ship in the Atlantic. On separate days, no one would question these tragic events, but on the same day, we can only wonder if somewhere there is a connection.
Forgive me, Mr. Ambassador, but that does sound just a little paranoid.
Yet Mr. Sterling comes from experience.
What is your concern, Mr. Gagarin?
With the Sudan, it's simply too early to pinpoint our worries.
Well, there you go.
However, with the British oil tanker,
yes,
our concern is with which country you decide is responsible for this tragedy.
Perhaps you could be a little clearer, Mr. Ambassador?
Are you looking for a way into Syria?
Blame has yet to be apportioned.
Blame is not what this is about, as well you know.
A man of your standing should know exactly what this is about, and it should not need to be explained.
You mean not voiced aloud?
Not even whispered.
The sins of the father now visited upon the son.
The power structure in Damascus will remain unchanged.
But with your men at the top,
What's on your mind, Mr. Ambassador?
the price of oil, Mr. Sterling.
The price per barrel is holding up at the moment.
It is the future that concerns Moscow.
Is this what is keeping President Gradezny up at night?
Господин Anatoly Gradyezny is most interested to know whether, after the fall of Damascus and the servitude of the petroleum-producing nations, we can expect a glut of production on the world oil market. Once Iraqi oil is pumping at full capacity and Syrian oil is reaching the marketplace, you will in effect control some 16% of global production.
Figures were never my strong point, Mr. Ambassador.
You're too modest, sir.
A critical flaw in my character.
The lowering of oil prices would only serve the US economy, but could spell the end of OPEC.
Wouldn't that be a shame?
In 1973, the major oil-producing nations squeezed production and forced up the price per barrel to unacceptable limits. What is now remembered as the oil crisis?
Oh, a history lesson.
We know now that your President Nixon had once played with the idea of invading the Middle East and securing the oil fields for the sake of the US economy.
Whose economy would you like him to have done that for?
And if I may bring the story up to date,
Please do.
30 years later, what the White House saw then as the only means of American survival at the repositioning of the US on the world stage is now what this White House has put in motion.
Is that the end of the story?
Hardly. Today we now have a seat at the table and we demand to be heard. Oil prices now affect us, at least if not more than the Arabs.
I am aware of your reserves now in the international arena and what a price fall would mean to you.
It would take bread out of our children's mouths.
You could always tighten your belts.
Let us not fool ourselves, Mr. Sterling. Since the unofficial adoption of the dollar throughout Russia, you know as well as I that the US Treasury has removed $300 billion from our economy.
I said math never was my greatest talent.
At the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall, Soviet population stood at 164 million. Today is 145. In 10 years' time, 130. The life expectancy for the average Russian male is now 48. You are trying to breed us out of existence. My president is still surrounded by ex-communists who look back at the days of the Berlin Wall as the good times. You are not making reform easy for him.
It's not my job to make life easy for your president.
We will fight you if necessary over this. You are forcing us to fight you over this.
Fizzy drinks. Our major contribution to world culture, that of course into entertainment. Many different forms of culture have been tried across the planet, as I'm sure your country remembers only too well. But only one idea has been proven to have any longevity. We guess which one that is? Yes, you're right. The capitalist version. In the end, it was always going to win. No one else ever had a chance. I'm sure you know how communist Russia was established in the first place. Of course you do.
Lenin, by any chance?
And who provided the money for his return? And the startup of communist Russia.
Wall Street bankers.
Mr. Ambassador, we founded your nation. You justified our arms budgets for over 50 years, and now you think your Siberian oil fields are going to have the final laugh when the Arabs run dry? You didn't stand with us when we needed your vote in the Security Council over Iraq.
How could we support a proposal of that kind? You knew very well that we had a deal with Saddam over the development of the West Kurna oil field. Your invasion cost us $20 billion, to which you offered us no compensation. Our oil peaked in 1987, so of course we did not support Resolution 1441.
And now you fear that we could force your broken confederation into one huge economic splintered mess. You are right to fear. Cuba now stands as a model to the past of what happens when you go against the might of the U.S. What's left of Russia is about to be a modern-day example to the world of what happens to those who were once on an equal footing. But now, sadly...
Then we shall stand as an example to something new.
And what on earth could that possibly be, Mr. Ambassador?
We shall stand as an example of what it means to hold onto our oil, letting the rest of the world run dry and then slowly watching the United States have an economic meltdown as you chase every last drop of remaining oil on the planet. We Russians have learned to be patient and keep a watchful eye on the value of our limited reserves.
Providing that you are not forced into putting large amounts of those reserves on the world market and subsequently lowering the price. If your IMF loans and WTO contracts come to an end, you'll be forced, Mr. Ambassador, to do precisely that and sell to the highest bidder. Can you guess who that might be? Russian oil is $15 to $20 to produce. Saudi oil is only $5 to $6. And we both know where the majority of our oil comes from. A run on the cost of oil, or a period of overproduction and a flood of reserves on the world market will cost Russia billions of dollars. You certainly do not have.
What do you want, Mr. Sterling?
Many things, Mr. Ambassador. Get out your notebook and make a list. Number 1, we want you to talk to the heads of your so-called confederation, all the large oil producers such as Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan.
Prime Minister, I was warned to expect your call. Yeah. I understand only too well the pressure you must be under at this moment from your people and your military chiefs to retaliate, and I for one would clearly understand your desire to do so. But I feel that a diplomatic approach should at least be seen to have failed before we act so overtly, especially against yet another Arab country. My predecessor, as you know, may not have been averse to the odd military intervention, but I would very much like to get through my time in the White House without bombing anyone, if that is at all possible. I understand exactly what you're asking me, Prime Minister, and asking of me. Will we stand by you if you choose to go against Syria following the sinking of your oil tanker? Of course we shall stand by you, Prime Minister, as our two great countries always have.
David, I'm sorry to pull you out of your meeting, but something's come up that I think you should know about, as it's going to land on the President's desk by lunchtime.
Carl, what is it?
A freelance reporter from the Tribune working out in Damascus has been taken hostage by a group calling itself the Answar. Sound familiar?
Yeah. What else do they say?
They say that unless they receive $20 million by Friday, they'll kill him.
You think the President should pay?
You know our stated policy with regards to dealing with terrorists.
Yeah. And look at how successful it was with Iraq. Openly or behind the scenes, we simply have no choice, Carl. That's the world we live in. But right now, we've got a few days before we have to write that check. Let's see if we can't leave it off the President's desk just for the moment.
You think Syria's back on the cards?
I think it never went away. Not for me, anyway.
You think war's coming?
We may not be able to avoid it. But our case for this must be watertight. No more secret documents from the British. No more congressional hearings into who said or did what. And no more presentations at the UN for the world to pick over and tear apart. The people must not only understand, but also believe in what we tell them. And the President will be concerned about popular support for this particular struggle.
The public will come round. They always have so far. The people will back the White House.
Memories are too short. That's the real problem.
If they knew what we know, They'd be urging us to nuke Damascus. Airstrikes, when they come, will seem tame under the circumstances.
Yeah, let's not use that form of language this close to the Oval Office. We will go through the diplomatic steps as required. Where they take us, well, we'll be ready. No one holds anything over us now. After all this time, we are finally free to act. And act we will.